Okay, so it came packaged like this in this box. I opened it just because I was absolutely curious if it was seriously going to come with a knife and a sheath. And it did. I was absolutely shocked. It definitely looks like what was in the picture. But one thing I could not see in the pictures was how thick the spine was. And that's actually a pretty good thickness. I figured we could start with, you know, some basic stuff, really. Say, it's got some good, that how front heavy it is in the blade. You get a lot of, you know, it can actually do some chopping. You know, I would use my axe for stuff like this. I mean, it cuts pretty good for out of the box, I got to admit. Oh, no complaints there. I just noticed something else also, the maker's mark here. Yeah, it does have the 4. The 4 is just barely legible, but yeah, it's there. I would probably never try to split something like this with a knife, but I guess if I had to, I know my old knife could do it. So let's see if this could. Yeah, I mean, granted it's seasoned lumber, but still, I wouldn't, you know, try to do that with my other knife. So the fact that this can do it is pretty good. And you see me keep jamming it into this log like that. That's a test of the tip. I want to see if that tip will hold up, you know, just from, make sure it's not just going to snap off, you know, at the first stress. And it's not. Oh, wait a minute. That tip bent. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that tip bent. It didn't snap. I guess that's telling, because it's always better to have your knife bend than have it, you know, snap off. Yeah, it did bend a little. Let's see if we can bend it back. I was able to bend it straight again. I just wanted to add, I noticed something as I was straightening out that tip. This right here is almost as sharp as a knife edge. In my state, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Well, maybe if it was any more sharp, it would be illegal. So I guess the edge held up for that. Obviously, I didn't put it through much yet. But you can see the edge is still, you know, in good shape. So after the testing I put this through, I was curious how well the edge would hold up. Because the fact that that tip bent means it's obviously, you know, a softer temper. This is the strap I use. It's a two-sided strap. I recently put on new clay, so should be good to go. This is sharpened at a much steeper angle than I'm used to. It's probably more than 20 degrees. So I'm used to finding that edge.
The sheath, it's okay. I mean, it's not put together in the best way, but they used good thick leather. The stitching, I mean, the stitching's okay. It's not the best sheath in the world, but you know, for $14, you get a real leather sheath.
But here's my only qualm with it. The knife can come all the way out to here. And you see, I'm not pulling that hard. Let's see here. See what I mean? The fact that that came out, you know, if I'm walking, I mean, obviously I'm not upside down while I'm walking, but still, I kind of don't like that. They could have solved that by making this snap a little tighter. Well, the whole buckle a little tighter, because it's pretty loose, you know? It looks like they used some glue to kind of glue that in there also. But that without stitching is not enough to keep this. All right, let's go test this edge. I want to see if this thing is going to hold an edge or not. I am really curious. Why you would ever do this with a knife, I have no idea. But I think it'd be a good test to test the edge retention. Cross-cutting, batoning, like cutting down a sapling or something, you know? See, I mean, I got pretty deep in there, you know, and honestly, I feel no edge deformation at all. That feels just as sharp as when I started, but we're not done yet. Focus. See it right there? That just stabbed me in the thumb. That hurt. I didn't like that. I'll have to take a sander to that. But a little sandpaper will fix that right quick. It is a little rough now. I don't know what the heck happened there. I don't think I missed with the baton, and I never hit the handle, so. But yeah, ow, I felt like I got stung. Has a nice push cut to it, you know, with that belly. And I know I did this exact same thing already, but that was with the factory edge, and it was not as sharp. So the more I can get this like a razor, the easier it will be to tell how the edge retention is. I mean, obviously a dull knife doesn't seem to go dull that quick, but nothing. No burrs. Razor sharp still. Oh yeah. I don't know, what else can we do to test this edge? I should also mention too that, and this is a good point, so far nothing's come loose on this knife. It's still nice and tight and secure. So that's always a good sign. I mean, a shitty knife, oh, excuse my language, a junk knife would easily, start to loosen, maybe rattle in there, but no, it's held together pretty well so far. Also, I want to talk about the spine. So the spine of this knife has a nice sharp 90-degree angle on it, and also it's got this really sharp clip point. I mean, that clip point itself you can almost whittle with, I mean, that's a sharp clip point. But the spine itself also is nice and sharp. Not as sharp as the Mora, as something like a Mora Garberg, or like my knife there, I filed to, a nice sharp 90-degree angle with a burr overhanging so that when I strike a ferro rod, that burr really lays into it. But if you needed to make, shavings or something, even if the spine on this wasn't enough for you, you could always use that clip point, which is, like I said, a knife edge in itself. I mean, look at that. So you have a few different tools in one, really. You have that razor edge knife. You have this kind of like a dull blade that you can do anything that you could do with a dull blade. And then for something you really don't need even any kind of real edge for, you have that sharp 90-degree spine. It's a shame that, they make a knife like this and then don't just give it the full tang,
However, they do offer a full tang with a ram's horn handle for $32 when I looked it up. And that's actually what got me interested in how good their steel and their knives were.
A couple other things I noticed about this the more I handle it. The spine does have a nice sharp 90-degree angle there. So you could strike a ferro rod with that, or honestly, this back edge here, which anyone could very easily sharpen into a knife edge or a razor's edge. That would be, very great for things like making shavings or shaving magnesium, something where you want to save the edge of your knife. So I kind of like that feature. And the only problem with the 90-degree spine, though, that I see is that having bent that tip, I know that this steel is not super, super hard. So you strike a ferro rod with this a lot, and you might not have a 90-degree edge anymore. So it's kind of a, I don't know. I wouldn't normally use a knife to strike a ferro rod anyway, but something like this, I would use this. That would be actually great for striking a ferro rod, making shavings. So I kind of like that little clip point sharp like that. So because that piece of brass came out and poked my thumb, I decided to do it. And it still feels, kind of rough all around. Just quickly hitting it with some sandpaper. Try something out. Because knife should not hurt to use it. Wow, that's 100 times better. You can see where I've been working this in the wood. That's where I said I spent about 10 minutes just hitting it in there. I mean, that's hard. It's a very solid surface for a knife edge to hit. Obviously, the edge is softer because the grain is more spread out. But as you get into the center, that's tough stuff. You can see, I mean, it don't even sink in. That's just hitting something very solid with a very small edge. People say this, oh, it's maybe the Pakistani steel isn't hardened, you know, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know. This is what I'm trying to do to find out. I want to test this steel. I don't care about the $14. It's also, I should mention, putting a lot of shock through the guard, the handle, these pins, and I'm pretty sure the mosaic pin is the only one actually. I think the handle stops, or the tang stops about here, judging by the weight. So, I mean, it's putting a lot of stress on there, and everything's staying together well. I mean, that's solid. I can't sink a knife into that, you know, maybe the tip, yeah, but not the full length of the edge. That is just something you try to avoid with your knife, for sure. It will sink in though, because if I hit it just right, if I really use the weight of the blade, it will stick in there. I mean, it's hitting with a good amount of force. I mean, you can hear how solid that is though. I mean, that wood grain is so... That's solid wood. What these 4x4s were used for was they were basically part of a skid that was holding 1 ton of sheet metal, and they don't use cheap pine for that. They use hardwood. The 1 ton of sheet metal is only, you know, probably, you know, 4 or 5 inches thick, but it's heavy. It's 1 ton. And this is the wood they use to build the skids. So just damaging that edge as much as I can. This cheap knife. We'll see. I mean, I've not sharpened that edge since I said, you know, I got it razor sharp a few days ago. I've not wanted to. I want to see how that edge holds up, and this is a test that I know would definitely stress out an edge. I also have some copper. I might get to that a little later. Yeah, copper's funny because it kind of bites onto that steel, and it's like sticky when the steel goes through it. So I might start chopping at some copper here pretty soon. See that at the tip of my thumb? That's the 3rd time I've had that brass inlay form a sharp sliver that I'll now have to sand down if I wanted to keep using the knife. Definitely not a fan of that, I'll tell you what. Okay, so a friend of mine told me about this edge retention test. He's actually making me a custom knife right now. And I think I have the camera set up here so that you guys should be able to see this on camera. Okay, so from what he described, I believe this is what he was saying to do. You take a small rod, something a 1/4 inch smaller or less, you press the edge against it and press down with a medium amount of force, and then you let it roll if it rolls. And I don't know if you can see, but that edge is deforming as I do this. Although on this $14 knife, I'm not feeling a burr. It's not chipping, which is obviously good. From what I'm seeing here, I mean, this pretty good at holding an edge. I mean, I'm pressing down pretty hard. I see a little deformation happening, but it kind of doesn't interfere with, like, it's not making it that much more dull. That's sharp. Can definitely see some edge deflection there, but not as bad as I expected, honestly.
I also returned a little later and batoned it into this copper a bit more, just to really kind of get a little more damage on that edge.
Since my next test is probably to break this blade in half, I resharpened it after chopping that copper. This is the first time I touched the edge since I put it through all that. My conclusions on this knife. We'll start with the things I don't like. One, the sheath. Definitely not a fan of the way it's constructed. You can see they missed a stitch right there. And that stitch is the only thing really holding in where this belt loop wraps around, other than some glue that they added. I've added more glue. I'll probably throw another stitch in there before I give it to, no, I'll get to that. But, so yeah, also I'm not a fan of how loose it was. Like I mentioned earlier, this strap should have been tighter. Doesn't hold the knife in very well. Biggest downside to this overall, though, was those pieces, those little slivers of the inlay that kept splintering out and poking me. I sanded it down. It's not doing it now, but that really irritated me. Other than that, I mean, besides the obvious fact that it's not full tang, I don't see any other negatives to this. The softness of the steel is not what I would prefer in a knife, but it's also, I wouldn't really call it a disadvantage. I just say it is what it is. It's just not the hardest steel on the planet, or not the hardest temper, I should say. Things I do really like about this, though, I love that clip point. I like the spine, how it's nice and sharp. Even if I wouldn't use it to strike a ferro rod because of how soft the steel is, it's great for making shavings. I like the weight. I like the feel. I love the handle. The handle feels great in your hand. It's got a nice big lanyard hole there. No problem fitting, a lanyard through there. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, is it worth $14? Well, that's for the individual to decide, but I don't feel like I wasted my money. The only test I had left to do to this was to literally snap the blade in half and look at the grain structure inside, see how it was really, kind of heat treated and tempered from the inside look. And I was going to have an expert look at it too, but then the same day I had that scheduled, a buddy of mine told me his son was graduating from high school, so I decided to give it to him as graduation present instead, because I do believe it'd be a great first knife for somebody, because let's say you want to get into learning how to sharpen a knife, because the steel's softer. It's not like if you've ever tried to sharpen a stainless knife, it takes a lot of work to see any change on that. A knife like this, it's very easy to sharpen. So you can really make sure, you'll learn how to sharpen quicker with softer steel. And I think this knife will hold up well for him. So that's my take on it. Is it worth $14? I feel it was, but that's up for you to decide.